Welcome back to the channel. If you're here late at night looking for a story to drift off to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. I'm also curious, where are you listening from and what time is it for you right now? Now settle in, get comfortable, let the world slow down. There are places in the world where tragedy does not fade, where time moves forward, families come and go, yet something about the land itself feels unsettled. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York is one of those places. A large Dutch colonial with dark shutters and a boat dock stretching into the river, it looks peaceful at first glance. But beneath that quiet exterior lies a history so disturbing that it continues to blur the line between crime and legend. Long before the stories of ghosts, glowing eyes, and unseen forces captured the public imagination, there was a family who called this house home. And what happened to them on a cold November night would turn an ordinary suburban address into one of the most infamous locations in American history. To understand the horror that followed, we must first understand the family that lived there. Ronald Joseph DeFeo Sr., known to most as Big Ronnie, was born in 1930 in Brooklyn, New York. He came from a working-class Italian-American family and grew up with ambition, charm, and a volatile temper. In his younger years, Big Ronnie was considered handsome and confident, someone who knew how to command attention. He eventually found work in the auto business, a career that gave him a sense of authority and control. He married Louise Marie Brigante in the early 1950s. Louise came from a wealthier family, and her parents strongly disapproved of the match. They viewed Big Ronnie as unstable and unworthy of their daughter. Despite this, Louise went through with the marriage, cutting ties with her parents for years. Their first child, Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr., was born in 1951. He would later become known as Butch. From an early age, the DeFeo household was defined by tension. Big Ronnie was unpredictable. He could be affectionate one moment and explosively angry the next. Family members later described his parenting style as harsh and frightening. Discipline often crossed into violence, leaving lasting emotional scars. Butch grew up in this environment, constantly trying and failing to meet his father's expectations. He struggled in school and was frequently bullied for his weight and appearance. His home offered no refuge. His father's approval was rare and fleeting, and his mother often seemed caught between protecting her children and appeasing her husband. As the years passed, the family grew. Louise gave birth to 4 more children: Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. By the mid-1960s, the DeFeos moved from Brooklyn to Long Island, settling into the house on Ocean Avenue. The house was large, expensive, and impressive. Neighbors admired it. Outsiders wondered how the family could afford such luxury. Much of that financial support came from Louise's parents, who had slowly re-entered her life. They paid for renovations, furnishings, and even commissioned large oil portraits of the family that hung prominently inside the house. From the outside, the DeFeos appeared successful and well-established. Inside, however, the family was unraveling. By the time Butch reached adulthood, his struggles had intensified. He began using drugs, spending long nights drinking, and clashing violently with his father. Arguments were frequent and loud. Police were occasionally called. At least once, Butch threatened Big Ronnie with a firearm. Despite this, the family continued living together, locked in a cycle of resentment and denial. On the night of November 13, 1974, that cycle ended. In the early morning hours, while the rest of the house slept, Butch moved through the rooms with a rifle. One by one, his family members were killed in their beds. The crime happened quickly and silently, despite the weapon used. No one fought back, no one ran. By the time the sun rose, 6 people were dead. Later that morning, Butch went to work as usual. He socialized, ran errands, and behaved as though nothing had happened. It was not until the afternoon that he entered a local bar, visibly distressed, and claimed his family had been murdered. Police rushed to the house on Ocean Avenue and found a scene that stunned even seasoned investigators. The victims were discovered in their bedrooms, all positioned face down. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle elsewhere in the house. The family dog had not been harmed. Almost immediately, Butch began offering explanations. He suggested organized crime involvement. He named names. He changed details. Within hours, his story began to collapse. The following day, under intense questioning, Butch confessed, "I just started. I couldn't stop." At trial, the defense attempted to paint a picture of mental illness, claiming Butch heard voices that compelled him to act. Prosecutors rejected this argument. Psychiatric evaluations concluded that while Butch showed signs of severe personality disturbance, he understood what he was doing. In 1975, he was convicted on 6 counts of murder and sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms. The legal case was closed, but the story was far from over. Just over a year later, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue was sold again. George and Kathleen Lutz were a young married couple with 3 children. They were drawn to the house immediately. It was spacious, beautiful, and priced far below market value. They were fully aware of its history. The murders were no secret, but the Lutz family believed they could move past it. They moved in December of 1975. From the very beginning, something felt wrong. George Lutz began waking every night at the same time, just after 3 in the morning. The house felt cold even when the heat was on. Doors would not stay closed. Strange odors filled certain rooms without explanation. The family's behavior began to change. Tempers shortened, sleep disappeared, fear settled in. Their youngest daughter spoke of an imaginary friend. George claimed to see figures watching from the windows. Kathleen described moments where she felt detached from herself, as if she were not alone in her own body. Within weeks, the family was unraveling. On January 14, 1976, after only 28 days in the house, the Lutz family fled. They left behind furniture, clothing, and personal belongings. They never returned. What they claimed to have experienced inside the house would soon be shared with the world. Author Jay Anson documented their account in a book titled The Amityville Horror. It became an instant bestseller. The public was captivated. Was the house haunted? Were the murders connected to something darker? Or was it all an elaborate fabrication fueled by fear, stress, and opportunity? Opinions split sharply. Skeptics pointed to inconsistencies. Believers pointed to coincidences too disturbing to ignore. Films followed. Interviews multiplied. The house became a symbol, no longer just a crime scene, but a cultural phenomenon. Yet through all the debate, one fact remained undeniable. A family had been murdered inside those walls. And whatever people believed about what came after, the violence that happened there was real. As the years passed, the house changed hands again. New owners reported nothing unusual. The address was altered. The windows were remodeled. Time moved forward. But the story never truly faded. Because some houses don't let go of their past. The thing about quiet towns is that they learn how to keep secrets long before they learned how to tell the truth. By the time the sun rose over Pine Hollow, the cabin at the edge of Alder Creek was already sealed with yellow tape, its windows dark, its door standing open like a wound that refused to close. Deputies moved in and out with stiff expressions, careful not to look at one another for too long. Everyone could feel it. Whatever had happened inside that cabin was not a crime of chance. It was deliberate, personal, and unfinished. When Sheriff Nolan Reed stepped through the doorway, the air felt heavier than it should have. Pine Hollow was used to cold mornings and damp wood smoke, but this was different. The silence pressed in. Reed had worked murders before, but rarely ones that carried this kind of stillness, as if the house itself were holding its breath. The victims were found in the main room. Evelyn Carter lay closest to the fireplace, her hands bound, her body positioned as if someone had taken time to place her there. Nearby were her teenage son, Lucas, and his friend, Aaron Bell. Their injuries told a story of fear and resistance without needing words. There was no sign of forced entry, no signs of theft. Whatever had happened, the people inside had known their attacker, or at least hadn't believed they were in danger until it was too late. But the detail that haunted everyone was not the violence. It was the absence. 12-year-old Mira Carter was gone. Her bed was neatly made, her shoes still by the door, her jacket hung on its hook, untouched. It was as if she had been lifted out of the night without a sound. Within hours, Pine Hollow became a town under a microscope. State investigators arrived. The creek was searched. Dogs traced scent trails that ended abruptly near the service road, as if someone had known exactly where to go. Volunteers combed the forest, calling Mira's name until their voices went hoarse. No ransom note came, no phone call, no demand, just silence. Inside the cabin, the evidence raised more questions than answers. The bindings used on the victims were inconsistent. Some knots were tight and methodical, others hurried and uneven. A roll of medical tape sat abandoned near the kitchen counter, its torn end smeared with blood. One knife lay on the floor, its blade bent at an unnatural angle, as if it had been driven harder than the metal could tolerate. Another weapon, possibly used earlier, was nowhere to be found. The crime scene suggested more than one person, or at least more than one state of mind. Calm followed by chaos, control giving way to rage. And then there was the sound issue. Neighbors reported hearing something around 1:40 a.m., not screams exactly, more like muffled shouting, followed by a sharp noise that might have been a car door. No one had called it in. In Pine Hollow, people were used to minding their own business. The forest carried strange sounds at night. Everyone told themselves it was nothing. Detective Mara Ives from the State Bureau focused on one detail others overlooked. A section of the cabin's wall paneling had been removed, exposing insulation beneath. It was not damaged. It was intentionally taken down. Sound dampening, she thought. Someone had planned for noise. That level of preparation didn't fit a spontaneous outburst. As the investigation widened, attention turned to the people closest to the Carters. Evelyn had moved to Pine Hollow less than 2 years earlier, escaping a long, unhappy marriage back east. She kept to herself, worked part-time at the lodge, and had earned a quiet respect in town. But she had also made waves without meaning to. She had encouraged a neighbor, Denise Harper, to leave her abusive partner. She had reported late-night disturbances near the cabins to the property manager. Small things, the kind that don't seem dangerous until someone decides they are. Denise's partner, Wade Larkin, became an early person of interest. Larkin was known in Pine Hollow for his temper. He drank hard and held grudges longer. More than one resident reported seeing him arguing with Evelyn weeks before the murders. He had been asked to leave the lodge bar twice for causing scenes. His alibi for the night in question rested on 2 friends who could not agree on details. But suspicion is not proof. Another name surfaced quickly, Jonah Pike. Pike lived 2 cabins down from the Carters and worked odd jobs around the resort. He had helped Evelyn fix a leaking sink months earlier and had been seen talking to Mira more than once. Nothing overtly inappropriate, nothing anyone could point to with certainty, just enough to make people uneasy in hindsight. When questioned, Pike seemed nervous but cooperative. He claimed he had been home alone the night of the murders, asleep by 10. No one could confirm it, no one could deny it either. Then there was the detail no one wanted to say out loud. Mira had not been taken randomly. Her brothers had been left alive in the back room. They had slept through the entire attack, untouched. If the killer wanted to eliminate witnesses, the job was left incomplete. If the goal was murder alone, why take the youngest child? Detective Ives believed Mira was the reason for the crime, not an afterthought. Someone had come for her and eliminated obstacles along the way. Days turned into weeks. The searches grew quieter. The town returned to something resembling normal life, though nothing truly felt normal anymore. Pine Hollow became careful with itself. Doors locked earlier. Conversations stopped when strangers walked by. Children were watched more closely. 3 months after the murders, a hunter found something deep in the ravine miles from town. A small backpack, weathered and torn, tangled in brush near the riverbank. Inside were a notebook, a hair tie, and a faded blue ribbon. Mira's. The discovery reignited everything. Search teams returned to the woods. The river was dredged. Every abandoned structure within 50-mile radius was inspected. Still no sign of Mira. Until nearly 3 years later. A construction crew clearing land near a decommissioned fire road uncovered skeletal remains partially buried beneath leaves and soil. The bones were small, too small. Dental records confirmed what everyone had feared but never stopped hoping against. It was Mira. There were no obvious signs of how she died. Time had erased too much. But one detail chilled investigators to the core. A strip of medical tape, degraded but intact, lay a short distance from where her remains were found. It matched the tape used in the cabin. Mira had survived the night of the murders. For how long, no one could say. The case shifted from tragedy to obsession. Why keep her alive? Where had she been held? And who had finally decided to silence her? A re-examination of evidence revealed troubling mistakes from the early days, interviews that had never been followed up, tips logged but ignored, items collected without proper documentation. The chain of custody for several key pieces was incomplete, making them unusable in court. In one of the most damaging revelations, a recorded interview from Wade Larkin's former partner had gone missing. Denise Harper had told an officer that Wade came home the night of the murders with scratches on his arms and mud on his boots. She claimed he burned clothing in a barrel behind their cabin 2 days later. The statement existed, but the tape did not. Denise later recanted parts of her story, citing fear and pressure. Without the original recording, prosecutors had nothing solid to stand on. Jonah Pike left Pine Hollow less than a year after the murders. No forwarding address, no official reason. He was never charged with anything, but his departure only deepened speculation. Then came the anonymous call. 2 weeks after Mira's remains were identified, the sheriff's office received a voicemail after hours. The voice was distorted, possibly altered. It referenced the fire road before its discovery had been made public. It mentioned the creek crossing and the old marker tree. Details only someone involved should have known. The call was traced to a prepaid phone purchased in a neighboring county. No fingerprints, no footage. Another dead end. As years passed, Pine Hollow learned to live with the unanswered questions, but they never truly faded. The cabin was demolished, new trees were planted, families moved in and out, unaware of the ground beneath their feet. For investigators, the case remained open but dormant. Every so often, a new detective would review the files and feel the same frustration. The pieces were there, but they no longer fit together cleanly. Time had blurred edges, people had died, memories had changed. What remained was a pattern. Someone had come into that cabin knowing exactly what they wanted. They controlled the situation, adapted when things went wrong, and vanished back into the quiet of the forest. And for years, they had lived with what they did, unseen, unpunished. But secrets, especially violent ones, have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. And Pine Hollow was about to learn that the past was not done speaking. There is a moment in every cold case when the past stops whispering and starts knocking. For Pine Hollow, that moment came quietly, almost by accident, when a retired evidence clerk named Harold Finch decided to clean out his garage. Finch had worked at the county sheriff's office for nearly 25 years. He was the kind of man people forgot the moment he left the room, dependable, orderly, invisible. When he retired, no one questioned why he took several unmarked boxes home with him. They assumed they were personal papers, old uniforms, nothing of consequence. They were wrong. Inside one of those boxes was a manila envelope labeled simply Carter. Inside the envelope was a property log that had never been entered into the system. Attached to it was a small sealed evidence bag containing a key. A cabin key. Not to the Carter home, but to a storage shed near the old fire road. Finch claimed he had no memory why he kept it, only that he was told years ago to hold on to it for now. By whom, he could no longer say with certainty. But when the sheriff's office reopened the case files, that key became the most important object they had seen in decades. The shed it belonged to still stood, hidden by trees and rot, its padlock long rusted away. Inside, investigators found what time had tried to erase. Old restraints, degraded medical tape, a child's shoe buried beneath debris. Mira's shoe. The realization hit like a delayed explosion. Mira had not been taken far. She had been hidden in plain sight within miles of the cabin in a place no one thought to look because someone made sure it never made the list. That someone had access. That someone understood how investigations worked. The case shifted again, this time with a sharp focus on process failures rather than suspects alone. Detective Mara Ives returned to Pine Hollow, older now, more cautious, but no less determined. She rebuilt the timeline from scratch, starting not with the crime, but with the evidence trail. And what she found was devastating. Key items had been signed in without dates. Witness statements were summarized instead of recorded. Certain tips had been routed to supervisors who never followed up. It was not incompetence alone, it was selective blindness. Patterns emerged. Every time Wade Larkin's name surfaced, the trail thinned, reports became vague, interviews were shortened, his alibi was accepted without challenge. And Larkin had a connection few had considered deeply enough. His older brother, Thomas Larkin, had been a deputy sheriff at the time of the murders. Thomas had been one of the first officers on scene. He had logged evidence, he had handled tape, he had overseen early interviews, and he had quietly resigned from the force less than a year later, citing stress. When questioned decades later, Thomas claimed memory loss. He said he barely remembered the case at all. But when shown photographs of the shed near the fire road, something shifted in his expression. Not panic, recognition. That was enough. A warrant was issued to search what remained of Wade Larkin's property, now abandoned. Beneath the floorboards of an old tool shed, investigators found a hammer, rusted, blue-handled, consistent with the type used in the cabin. It was too degraded for blood evidence. But it didn't need to be, because someone finally talked. Denise Harper had lived with fear for years, carrying what she knew like a weight that never lifted. When investigators approached her again, armed with new findings and the assurance of protection, she stopped running. She told them everything. Wade had come home that night frantic, hands shaking, clothes stained and torn. He told her there had been an accident, that things had gone too far. He said a man helped him clean up, a man who knew what to do. That man was his brother. Denise described Wade obsessing over Evelyn, blaming her for turning people against him. He fixated on Mira, convinced the girl had seen him do something illegal weeks earlier near the service road. He believed she would talk. He believed he had no choice. The plan, according to Denise, was not mass murder. It was silence. Evelyn woke up. Lucas intervened. Aaron was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Panic replaced control, and Mira became leverage, then liability. Denise said Wade told her Mira was kept safe for a while, that he argued with Thomas about what to do next, that eventually Wade took her alone. Denise never knew where, but Thomas did. Faced with this testimony, Thomas Larkin finally broke, not in confession, but in contradiction. He admitted to altering reports, to removing evidence, to redirecting investigators away from certain locations. He claimed he did it to protect his brother. He denied knowing Mira's fate. But the key shed key told another story. Under pressure, Thomas revealed that Wade had asked him to secure a place temporarily, just in case. He claimed he never went back, that he never checked. The truth was simpler and worse. He chose not to know. Wade Larkin died in a single-vehicle accident 8 years after the murders, driving off a mountain road late at night. At the time, it was ruled an accident involving alcohol. With everything now uncovered, investigators questioned whether it had been guilt, fear, or recklessness that sent him over the edge. Thomas Larkin was arrested on charges of obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. It was not the conviction Pine Hollow wanted, but it was the truth it had been denied. There would be no trial for the murders themselves. But there was accountability. The case file was officially closed with a conclusion that had taken 30 years to reach. The Elder Creek cabin killings were no longer unsolved. They were misclassified, mismanaged, and quietly buried until time forced them back into the light. Mira Carter's name was added to a memorial in town, not as a missing person, but as a victim finally acknowledged. Pine Hollow changed after that. Not dramatically, not visibly, but something shifted beneath the surface. People spoke more openly, old loyalties weakened. The belief that quiet is safety no longer held the same power. Detective Ives left town one last time, standing near the creek where the search had once stalled. She knew justice had come late and imperfect, but it had come. And sometimes that is all the living can offer the dead. As the rain settles in and the night grows still, stories like this remind us that truth does not disappear just because it is ignored. It waits, it watches, and eventually it demands to be heard. Thank you for listening. Rest now and let the night carry the weight you no longer have to. The phone vibrated at 3:17 a.m. Not rang, not buzzed with an incoming call. Vibrated. A single notification lit up the dark bedroom of Detective Aaron Cole. He reached for the phone half asleep, expecting an automated alert or a missed call from dispatch. Instead, he saw a name that made his breath stop cold. Lena Hart. She had been pronounced dead 12 hours earlier. The message was short, only 4 words. You missed something. For a long moment, Aaron didn't move. He stared at the screen, waiting for logic to step in and correct the impossible. Phones didn't text after their owners were dead, not unless someone else had them, not unless there was a mistake. But there was no mistake. Aaron had stood at the foot of Lena Hart's bed in St. Mary's Hospital and watched the heart monitor go flat. He had signed the report himself. Time of death, 3:04 p.m. And now, at 3:17 a.m., Her phone was texting him. Lena Hart had been a systems analyst for a regional logistics company, the kind of job that left no public footprint. She lived alone in a modest apartment on the east side of Briar Ridge, paid her bills on time, and kept her circle small. No criminal history, no known enemies. She wasn't supposed to be a case until she was found dead in her apartment bathroom, submerged in a half-filled bathtub, phone placed carefully on the sink counter beside her. At first glance, it looked like an accident. Slipped, hit her head, drowned. But Aaron had learned early in his career that accidents don't usually leave behind precision. The towels were folded, the floor was dry, the mirror was wiped clean, and Lena's phone had been placed face down, screen locked. Someone had been careful. The autopsy would come later, toxicology too, but the initial report listed cause of death as drowning with blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Manner of death, undetermined. Aaron had taken the phone into evidence himself, logged it, powered it down, sealed it in an evidence bag. Or so he thought. When he checked the evidence locker that afternoon, the bag was intact, the seal unbroken, and yet his phone now glowed with a message that could only have come from Lena's number. By sunrise, the department was buzzing. The tech unit confirmed the message had originated from Lena's phone. Not spoofed, not forwarded, not rerouted. It was a direct outbound text sent using her device, her SIM, her carrier. That alone should have been impossible. The phone was locked in evidence, and even if someone had accessed it, they wouldn't have known to text Aaron. He wasn't listed in Lena's contacts under his real name. She had saved him simply as AC. No one else knew that, except Lena. Aaron returned to the apartment that morning, standing once again in the small bathroom where her life had ended. The air still smelled faintly of disinfectant and bleach. The tub had been drained. The water stains outlined the exact position where her body had been found. He tried to see it differently now, not as a crime scene, but as a message. You missed something. The words echoed in his head. What had he missed? He scanned the room again, slower this time. The medicine cabinet, the trash bin, the underside of the sink. Nothing out of place, nothing obvious. Then he noticed the mirror, not the reflection, the corner. A tiny smudge near the bottom edge, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. He leaned closer. It wasn't dirt, it wasn't water, it was a fingerprint, but not a normal one. The ridge pattern was distorted, smeared as if someone had pressed too hard or wiped it away halfway through. Partial, unusable. Unless it wasn't meant to be used, unless it was meant to be noticed. Back at the station, Aaron reviewed Lena's phone records again. Her final outgoing call had been to a number that didn't exist. Her last incoming call came from a prepaid device registered to no one. But what stood out wasn't the calls. It was the texts. Over the past 6 months, Lena had been sending herself messages, reminders, notes, fragments of thoughts. But the timestamps were odd. Some were sent at times she couldn't have been awake. Others were backdated. A few were scheduled messages, set to deliver hours or days later. One draft message, unsent, caught Aaron's attention. If this phone sends anything after today, it wasn't an accident. Below it, another line, trust the metadata. The tech unit pulled the phone from evidence under supervision. The battery level was unchanged. The phone showed no sign of being powered on since it was logged, and yet the message to Aaron existed. When they examined the metadata attached to the text, the room went silent. The message had been queued, not sent in real time. It had been programmed days earlier, set to release at a specific time, 3:17 a.m. Lena hadn't texted Aaron after her death. She had anticipated it. That changed everything. This wasn't a ghost message. This wasn't a glitch. It was a contingency, which meant Lena believed she might not survive, and she believed Aaron would be the one looking for answers. Aaron traced the scheduled message back to an app buried deep in the phone system. Not a standard messaging app, a custom automation tool, usually used by developers and engineers. Lena had written scripts, rules, triggers. If the phone lost biometric access, if it was powered down unexpectedly, if it was moved to a new location without unlocking, messages would be released. Breadcrumbs, warnings, a digital dead man switch. The next scheduled message was set for 48 hours later, and this time it wasn't addressed to Aaron. It was addressed to someone else, a number flagged as internal, law enforcement. If that message went out, it would trigger a department-wide alert tied to Lena's case file, documents, logs, files she had somehow accessed. Aaron felt a knot form in his stomach. Lena hadn't just been afraid, she had been preparing for exposure. As night fell again over Briar Ridge, Aaron sat alone in his office, staring at the phone sealed inside its evidence bag. It felt wrong now, less like an object, more like a witness. Somewhere between her last breath and that scheduled message, Lena had turned her phone into a voice that would keep speaking after she was silenced. And whatever she had uncovered, whatever she had been trying to protect, someone wanted it buried with her. The phone vibrated once more, but this time Aaron didn't reach for it. He already knew. The dead had more to say, and this was only the beginning. The next message arrived at 2:03 a.m. Aaron Cole's phone buzzed violently, shattering the stillness of the station's evidence room. He jumped, instinctively looking at the sealed bag on his desk. Lena Hart's phone, still untouched, still locked inside evidence, and still, somehow, texting him. The text read, "Check the safe, you'll find answers." Aaron froze. The safe, he knew what she meant. Lena's apartment had a small, wall-mounted lockbox hidden behind a framed print in her living room. He had cataloged the scene thoroughly, yet had never opened that safe himself. It had been logged as a standard item, untouched in her apartment. Yet Lena had left him a command, a breadcrumb meant to be followed only after her death. Something about that message chilled him deeper than the last. Lena wasn't just leaving him information, she was orchestrating a puzzle, and he was the only one she trusted to solve it. Aaron drove to Lena's apartment before the sun rose, careful to leave no one behind to ask questions. The hallway smelled faintly of pine cleaner and the lingering hint of her shampoo. He climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor, pausing outside her door. The number of dead ends and wrong directions he had followed over the past 24 hours weighed on him. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. Nothing looked different. The apartment smelled sterile, untouched since the day she died. The living room was quiet. The bathtub had been drained. Towels were folded neatly in their usual spot. And then he noticed it. The framed print on the living room wall, slightly crooked, a detail so subtle that it could be missed at first glance. He pressed against it, wiggled the frame, and the small lockbox revealed itself, tucked snugly behind it. The safe had been there all along. Aaron removed it carefully, noticing how the metal felt unnaturally cold. The lock wasn't complicated, it was a simple combination, but Lena had left no note, no hints, not even a clue in her notebook that could explain what the combination might be. And then, as if on cue, his phone vibrated again, another message from Lena's number. "First number is your badge, second is the day of the week you met me." Aaron's mind raced. Badge number, that was easy. He typed it into the first dial. For the day of the week he had met Lena, he had to recall the exact date. He had never forgotten it, the day she had walked into the station with a question about a minor software breach at her company. Thursday. He typed Thursday into the safe. The click echoed through the empty apartment like a gunshot. Inside the safe lay a small metallic case. Light reflected off it in a way that made the hairs on Aaron's arms stand. Inside the case were two items, a flash drive and a small, unmarked envelope. The flash drive was labeled in Lena's precise handwriting, AC, watch carefully. He didn't open the envelope yet. That would be the next step once he had reviewed the flash drive. Back at the station, Aaron connected the flash drive to a secure computer in the evidence lab. The files were encrypted, protected by a password only Lena would have known. That's when another message appeared, on his personal phone, not the lab computer, the phone. Password hint: when the light dies, I spoke. Aaron frowned. He thought back to the night they had met in person. Lena had shown him a small USB device, one she had carried like a charm. They had joked about how she would leave secrets behind for him one day, a game neither had expected to play so literally. The light dies, she spoke. A memory surfaced, the little reading lamp in her apartment. She had left a note taped to its base, a single word written on a sticky note: coal. He typed the word into the password field. Access granted. The screen filled with folders, hundreds of them, each labeled with dates, locations, and what appeared to be phone numbers. Aaron realized quickly that Lena had been tracking something far larger than herself. Names of people, addresses, phone call logs, encrypted text messages, financial transactions. Patterns emerged across months of meticulous organization. And then he saw it. A folder labeled Emergency, Read Only If Dead. Every hair on Aaron's body stood on end. Lena had anticipated her death. She had prepared for the possibility, and she had left him a message to guide him through it. Inside the folder were three things: a document, another flash drive, and a file with a timestamp that read 3:15 p.m., the day after death. Aaron opened the document first. It was a statement in Lena's voice, typed clearly. If you are reading this, I am gone. What I discovered threatens more than just me. There are people watching everything. They know what I know. They cannot be allowed to continue. Use this carefully. Verify every number. Trust no one who contacts you outside this phone. The messages will guide you. Follow the instructions exactly. He paused. Messages would guide him. Lena's phone wasn't just a message device. It was a courier, a living system that would continue her work after she was gone. The next night, at 3:15 a.m., the timestamp Lena had left, this time the message was more specific. Go to 43 Willow Street, bring the flash drive alone, watch for mirrors. Aaron's mind raced. Willow Street was a residential block on the outskirts of Briar Ridge. The location made sense. Lena had listed it as a frequent drop point for sensitive materials, but the warning about mirrors unnerved him. Mirrors, they reflected light, yes, but why warn him specifically? He gathered his gear, taking the evidence bag, the flash drive, and locking his office door. The streets were empty. Fog clung to the streetlights. Every shadow seemed alive. He drove carefully, mind alert, scanning every corner. When he arrived at 43 Willow Street, the house looked abandoned, windows dark, porch light flickering from an old bulb. Aaron approached cautiously. The door creaked as he opened it. The interior smelled faintly of damp wood and old carpet. A flashlight revealed furniture shrouded in dust covers. And then he noticed the first mirror. An old vanity in the corner, draped in a white sheet. He uncovered it. Nothing unusual at first. He looked into the glass. Nothing. Then he realized the mirror reflected something behind him, something on the far wall, a small camera obscured by a curtain aimed directly at the entrance. Lena had anticipated someone watching. She had anticipated surveillance. The flash drive. He inserted it into a nearby laptop, careful to remain out of direct sight of the camera. A video file appeared. Step 1, AC. Lena's face appeared on the screen, alive, recorded days before her death. If you are seeing this, I am gone. They will try to intercept you. Use only the phone. Follow my instructions. Step 1 is to secure the files you already have. Step 2 will come from my phone. It will guide you further. If anything goes wrong, delete all data. You are my only chance of stopping this. The message ended. The video file locked automatically. The flash drive showed no other content. Aaron felt the weight of it. Lena's last message, her instructions, a warning that someone was still watching. Over the next 24 hours, the phone delivered more texts, each one precise, deliberate, and terrifyingly accurate. Do not trust the man at the gas station. Third floor window, look down. Package under the loose floorboard in 1 East Park. Each message led him to new discoveries, hidden USBs with financial records, lists of names, bank transfers, and encrypted logs. Aaron began to understand the scale of what Lena had uncovered. She hadn't just been worried about her life, she had been worried about a network, a system of people operating in the shadows, using ordinary tools, phones, emails, payments, to hide something much bigger. And she had built a failsafe into her death. The phone was no longer just a message device. It was a key, a map, and a warning system. By the second day, Aaron realized he was being followed. The shadows on the street, the cars parked too long near his apartment, the random text messages from numbers he didn't recognize, all pointed to the same truth. Someone wanted Lena's secrets dead with her. Yet the messages continued. Each one countered the threats, guided him away from traps, and pointed him towards the truth. By the third message, the phone vibrated with something different, a sense of urgency. Tonight, midnight, warehouse on Dock 7. Everything ends there. Aaron felt the pulse of adrenaline, dread, and responsibility. Lena had built a path he could follow, a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight into danger, but also into the heart of the network she had uncovered. And he knew without a doubt that if he failed, Lena's death would be meaningless. The phone buzzed once more. Aaron stared at the screen, realizing that the messages were no longer just warnings, they were instructions, a blueprint, a voice from beyond death guiding him to a confrontation he wasn't sure he could survive. Aaron Cole parked a block away from Dock 7, the warehouse Lena's phone had directed him to. Midnight draped the waterfront in a thick, suffocating fog, and the scent of salt and diesel clung to the air. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He gripped the phone like a lifeline, the small device now pulsing with purpose, buzzing intermittently as if it had its own heartbeat. "Stay in shadows. Don't approach through the main door," read the latest message. Aaron scanned the perimeter. The warehouse loomed like a dormant predator, corrugated steel walls gleaming dimly under flickering security lights. Shadows shifted in the fog, as if the building itself were breathing. A faint hum, mechanical and rhythmic, echoed from inside. He knew Lena had left everything he needed. If he followed the messages, he might survive. If he deviated, he might not. He approached from the side, ducking behind containers and avoiding the main entrances. Another text arrived. "Side door unlocked. Watch the floor. 3 steps, pause, then crawl. They expect anyone who walks upright." Aaron hesitated. It sounded absurd, but Lena had been meticulous. Absurdity was often the perfect cover. He counted 3 steps, paused, and dropped to the floor, crawled silently, feeling every splintered plank beneath his hands. The warehouse door loomed ahead, rusty and heavy. A final vibration. Inside, left, find the files, then the person who owns the shadows. Aaron slid the door open, the metal groaning in protest. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and dust. Rows of crates cast long, angular shadows. Each shadow seemed alive, stretching across the concrete like dark fingers. The phone vibrated again. "Light kills secrets. Use darkness. Camera at 3 o'clock. Move." Aaron froze. He saw it immediately, a black dome camera blinking red faintly in the darkness. He moved low, weaving between crates, following the phone's precise guidance. Every step brought him closer to a metal office at the far end. And then he saw her. A figure sat at a desk in the office, partially illuminated by a single dangling bulb. A woman. She looked up. Her face was obscured by shadows, but the presence was undeniable. The phone vibrated one last time. Do not speak until she acknowledges your name. Trust the device. Aaron whispered. Lena sent me. Aaron Cole. The woman tilted her head. Slowly, deliberately, she gestured toward a cabinet. Aaron approached, keeping his hands visible, heart pounding. Inside the cabinet were binders, hundreds of them, cataloged meticulously like Lena's folders. The same kind of network, the same kind of system Lena had been investigating, but these were raw, unprocessed, dangerous. Evidence of crimes, corruption, payments, and names. Names of people Aaron had never heard of, but whose power was unmistakable. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft yet firm, carrying authority in the dark warehouse. She left the phone for you because she knew you'd be able to handle this. She trusted you with what she uncovered, but trust alone isn't enough. You have to act. Aaron's mind raced. I don't know where to start. If I move too fast, if I expose myself. She cut him off. That's why the phone matters. The messages will guide you. They are her voice now. You can't hesitate. And then he realized the messages weren't just instructions. They were warnings, but also fail-safes. The phone didn't merely deliver texts. It predicted what he would encounter, calculated safe paths, tracked the network's attempts to intercept him. Lena had built an algorithm into it, a digital manifestation of her mind, capable of thinking, warning, and redirecting him in real time. Aaron swallowed hard. He opened the first binder. Names, dates, transactions, phone numbers, addresses, connections that traced back years, spanning cities, corporations, and government offices. The network was vast, and they knew Lena was dead. They assumed their secrets were safe. They always assume, he muttered. Another vibration. A text. 2 men are on their way. They will arrive in 7 minutes. Hide. Do not engage unless they discover you. Watch the shadows. Camera blind spots marked. Aaron scanned the warehouse. His eyes caught 2 figures moving outside through the foggy perimeter lights. They didn't notice the slight metal grate he crouched behind. He followed the text's instructions perfectly, staying in the blind spot, listening as the men entered, murmuring to each other. Check for the laptop. If it's here, destroy it. Aaron's pulse quickened. Destroy the laptop? Lena's files? His training kicked in. He knew he couldn't let that happen. He slid another crate silently, positioning it between him and the men. Then the phone buzzed again. Now, pull the binders from the cabinet. Take only what is essential. He grabbed 2 binders, the ones containing the most incriminating and actionable information. As he moved, one of the men lifted his flashlight, sweeping the aisle. Aaron held his breath. Every second felt stretched to infinity. The beam passed him by. His phone vibrated. Step to the left, 5 paces, then crouch. They are blind now. He obeyed. His heart hammered, sweat beading his forehead. When the men finally left the room, Aaron exhaled silently. He had survived. Step 3, another message read. Exit the warehouse, dock gate 2. Use boat. Avoid street. They know your car. Aaron followed it to the dock. A small boat was moored as instructed. He untied it silently, slipping into the water. Fog swallowed the shoreline. From the warehouse, faint lights flickered. Shadows shifted. He paddled into the darkness, letting Lena's phone guide him. For the first time, Aaron realized what the messages had truly been. They weren't just warnings. They were instructions for survival. They were a way for Lena to continue fighting from beyond the grave, and he was the executor of her last mission. By dawn, Aaron reached the far bank, exhausted, cold, but alive. He opened the binders. The scale of the corruption was staggering, but now he had the evidence to begin exposing it. His first call was to an investigative journalist Lena had trusted, a contact listed in her encrypted files. Within 24 hours, the first story hit the press. Financial crimes, human trafficking, and political corruption, revealed with airtight documentation. Newsrooms buzzed, agencies scrambled. The network had been blindsided. Aaron had expected threats. Attempts to intercept him had already occurred, but nothing could stop the evidence now. Then the phone vibrated one final time. A simple text. "Well done. Step away. Your life begins now." Aaron stared at the message. Relief washed over him. Lena's system had completed its purpose. Her voice, her intelligence, her planning, everything encoded into a small device had guided him safely and delivered justice. She had died, but her last message, her phone, had ensured her work endured. Aaron returned to his apartment, the binders and devices secure. The phone sat on his desk, inert, silent. He picked it up. Another message didn't come. It was finished. Lena's last message had been fulfilled. In the weeks that followed, the network unraveled. Investigations surged. Arrests were made. The corrupt entities had underestimated a woman who had prepared for her death, and a man willing to trust a phone that seemed alive. Aaron kept the phone. He didn't use it. He didn't need to. It had done what it was meant to do. But sometimes, late at night, he could swear it buzzed faintly on its own, a soft reminder that Lena's mind, her voice, her warnings had survived her death. And for Aaron, that was enough. He never sent another message. He never needed to. Lena had left him a map, a guide, and the tools to complete what she had started. Her last message wasn't just a text. It was a plan, a warning, and ultimately a triumph over death itself. Aaron Cole finally understood that some messages, some devices, and some minds were never truly gone, even when their owners were.